Hello, here we are once more to record the video about the latest updates in Magic the Gathering universe. Let's do this. Basically, a few hours ago, the decks were released, the decks that the 16 players will play. Yeah, it's quite interesting to see that there is a trend, although a few outliers are also there. Um, we have four players playing Temur Reclamation. Let me bring this here. Four players also playing Mono Red. Four players playing Jeskai Fires. And three players playing Azorius Control. And one player playing Jund Sacrifice, which you guys might know who it is. And then I want to make a few comments about each of these archetypes and what the difference may be, just a small flavor that each of these players they are bringing in. So let's start by talking about Temur Reclamation. I have a few notes here about these decks. Let me bring it up. So a few interesting facts is that we have four of them, right? So Chris, Matthias, Autumn, and Jean-Emmanuel, they are all playing it, but with a few things that I would like to highlight. Matthias Leverato is bringing a slightly different set than the others. He is bringing this Misvet, while others are not. Actually, Depros, the other player, is also bringing it, but on the sideboard, not on the main board, which is quite interesting to main deck this, you know. Also, an interesting thing about his deck, his version, is that he's running Gadwick also on the main deck. And also an interesting thing that I would like to highlight is that he's running 4 copies of Storm's Wrath. So he's definitely prepared for some of the decks we've been seeing on the meta currently. Something like red deck, mono red deck queen, and also white life, because obviously the players themselves also did not know the archetypes that would be submitted today, right? So I think they in a way hedged against most of the popular decks that are trending now, and this is the result of that, right? Because these guys certainly played a lot and tested a lot. I would say that the rest of the deck is pretty much standard for the current Temur Reclamation archetype that we've been seeing, which usually brings many copies of Tassa's Intervention. Now Uro is also being regularly played on this archetype, and Brazen Borrow, it's also quite common to see. And then we have the vanilla combo here, which is Wilderness Reclamation and Expansion, and the rest I would say is pretty much like the same. It's just to ramp up, for example, Omen of the Sea, and then Opt, and then Growth Spiral. So there's nothing really different about this one. But moving to another one, I would like to highlight a few facts about the version that Chris is bringing, which highlights 4 copies of Nissa, which is quite interesting and quite different from the others, which does not bring any planeswalkers. So it's interesting to see that he's actually betting on Nissa to play along Wilderness Reclamation and Expansion. Of course, with the amount of mana that Nissa also helps to generate, this can speed up the expansion and explosion, and also Nissa help with the token generation, not token but like making the lands become creatures. So this is also a different line of play that I think to be quite interesting. I already mentioned that the Depros, let's go there, also has the Mizzet, but on the sideboard, not on the main deck as the others. And then we can quickly talk about the version that Burchett is bringing, which is also slightly different. So we see here something like one copy of Scorching Dragonfire, which is at least unexpected because like why one copy and why this card in specific? Is it to target some specific creature or some specific planeswalker? And then like maybe the key here is that he wants to exile creatures or exile planeswalker. So it can be, right? Because the current meta includes many creatures that you need to exile them, the same for planeswalkers. So yeah, something was in his mind in order to add this card, especially main deck it, right? And then there's also a few interesting things here. So we have two copies of Nightpack Ambusher, which is also a bit unexpected. Three more copies of the Scorching Dragonfire, and the rest I would say it's pretty much the same. As you guys can see, Storm's Wrath, Wilderness Reclamation, so on and so forth. Okay, let's move forward to talk a bit about Mono Red now. So we have four of them, so it's the same proportion as the Mono Reclamation and also Jeskai. We're gonna start talking about some of the interesting things that this player, Eli Loveman, is bringing. He's basically bringing one thing that caught my attention, which is the one copy of Sorcerer's Spyglass in the sideboard. And I think this to be interesting because in a way he was already hedging, possibly hedging against decks with lots of artifacts or even like planeswalkers or enchantments. For example, you can with the Sorcerer's Spyglass you can counter the Witch's Oven, or you can even counter something like Teferi. So it's quite interesting to see that he, even though he's playing mono red, but he's also like hedging against this kind of deck, which is something unique. None of the other players added this here. But aside from that, we're seeing pretty much like the meta, the current red deck meta, which includes the Fervent Champion, and then all the other like small creatures that push damage quite early, and with the help of instants and other effects and other creatures, it increases the damage significantly, and like we see lots of pressure since the very first turn and so on. Then this deck is quite overwhelming. There are also a few like interesting tools like Unchained Berserker that has protection against white, and again like some of the decks that are trending right now in the meta are like White Life, which is basically the deck that has a Johnny and other creatures that grow stronger as the player is healed. So in that sense, I think this might be hedging against that. I'm gonna talk a bit about the Acheron War, but let's just move forward to Menguchi's version of the deck now, which also has something that I would like to highlight quickly. So it brings Chandra and Tybalt, which is also unique for this player. None of the others bring this, so I think this is interesting to say the least, because of course like they have something in mind, right? Something like that they think that will work against a certain archetype, that will help them to win the game against a certain archetype or something like that, so we need to keep an eye on it. And then to wrap up, because pretty much all the other players, Seth Manfield and also Sebastian Pouso, they're playing like pretty much the same deck. There's nothing different here, but it's interesting to see that like they're also bringing, some of them are bringing this Acorn of War as well, which is an interesting card uh, to like keep an eye on, to see what they want to do with it. Basically, this card allows you to gain control of target creature for as long as the Acorn of War remains on the battlefield. In other words, 3 turns, and then until your next turn, your creature your opponent control attack each combat, so you force the creatures to attack. So this is also good because sometimes the creatures are just there for their effects or something like that, and then you can push them to attack and selectively choose what you want to block, and then uh, yeah, gain advantage over the opponent. And also on the third turn, then each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. So it's a quite interesting enchantment, although it is a bit expensive for a mono red deck, right? But again, interesting to keep an eye on. Okay, let's go back and now quickly talk about the Jeskai Fires. Jeskai Fires is, I mean, not really different from what we already saw, like prior to Theros Beyond that. We just have a few new pieces like Dream Trawler, for example, which is a new card, but pretty much everything else is the same. Even the lands, if you see, like there aren't any new lands here. Of course, like in here we can find some interesting cards being added, like Elspeth Conquers Death and Shatter the Sky, but pretty much everything else is like already standard for a while. But we do have just one player that has a different version of it, which is Javier Dominguez, and he brought 2 copies of Dream Trawler. So this is a bit different from the others, and also like sideboarding quite many interesting tools like Disenchant, Tide Attacker, the Vault Decree. Um, Also has like the same 2 cards that we just saw. So I think we're gonna see some interesting lines of play with these new cards, and also with this like 1 copies of each tool, which for sure these guys studied, and they will add for specific archetypes, and they will make it work. So I'm really eager to see that. And then moving forward to Azorius, the one that I think is a bit different from the others is Severin version of Azorius Control, which brings a slightly different build. For example, he is the only one with 4 copies of Narset, and his build is a bit more control focused, with also 4 copies of Dream Trawler. Um, and then if we look at his sideboard, we see some interesting things like Spectral Sailor, and also Sorcerer's Spyglass, and also we see the Wanderer, which is awesome to see. Didn't expect to see this Planeswalker uh, appearing on the words, but we can see this quite cool um card to be played. It would be amazing to see it being played, and I can see some lines where it can be valuable, especially because now, like with against like John, that can generate lots of damage, not by like attacking phase, but just by, you know, triggering the engine and then ping the life for more and more and more. So this can be interesting. Also, like a card that I wouldn't expect to see at all, the emergency powers. So this is really interesting to see. I would love to see this being played. And Heliod's intervention, which is in a way not that like rare to see now in the current meta. But the rest, I would say the other decks are in a way similar, just with some small changes. One card or some other card that were added to maybe the main deck that the other players they added to the sideboard. But aside from that, I think it's pretty much the same. Um, and then we have the one deck that doesn't have any other player playing it, which is Piotr Gogolski, and he was the one who won the last Mythic Championship exactly with the same deck, this Jan the Sacrifice, which is the one that I was just talking about, which basically brings Mayhem Devil, and then you have the cat with the Witch's Oven, and then Trails of Crumb, and Corvold, which is pretty much the engine. But now, like, there are also a few new tools here, like Agonizing Remorse, for example. On the sideboard, he brings a few interesting tools to most probably deal with the cards that are trending in the current meta, but also like nothing super different. I think it's like just with some new cards being added, but pretty much the same line of play. Which, by the way, he played like I have never seen anyone else playing Giant Sacrifice like that. He made really a good performance with this deck. So yeah, I'm eager to see that. I will leave the link for the notes that I'm reading. So if you guys want to check, all the decks are available on EtherHub, on Andreas' profile. So you guys can go and copy all the ones I have here. So basically, the games will happen. Starts tomorrow, right? They will start at 11 a.m. Pacific time, PST, which I brought just a few different places, so maybe like some of you guys are watching from like these places or places nearby, so you can just like either like use yourself this website, which is called Time Zone Converter, or just have like a notion of when it will start based on the UTC plus here, the time zone. So you can check. This is when the tournament is supposed to start. Of course, it will last long time, and it's also supposed to happen in Saturday as well. Um, some of the events that were expected, they are already live. One of them, the showcase in here, although it's still locked. But you can also see the same decks that I just showed here. So this is what will be available from tomorrow until the 16th, and then you'll be able to get some reward, 2000 XP in rewards, and also the World Championship sleeve, which is quite cool. And then back to the content. I have a few links to share with you guys. The first one is basically talking about the tournament. So like some of the info I brought to you guys I got from here, but some I got from like some other places. But if you are interested, you can read the in-depth like analysis and everything that was shared by Wizards of the Coast. And then a few more links that I would like to share with you guys. One is the video that Noxious recently released. Most probably you guys know him because he's like I would say one one of the most talented, if not the most talented, I would say, like, is not streamer, but maybe YouTuber in the Magic scene right now. So if you don't know, I would recommend looking into. His content is really good. I just made a small joke here that he rant because it's quite funny and cool to listen. Him talking about like how the developers are making mistakes, and sometimes he does not agree with the moves that the Wizards of the Coast makes, but he's a super smart guy and an awesome Magic player. His streams are also quite good. I recommend watching. And then, so we can wrap up. Let me do this. I would like to recommend one more thing, which is this Black Lotus history video. This is kind of like off topic in a way, but at the same time not, because it's about Magic, and it's a 31 minutes video, but it's completely worth. It's basically a video that talks about collectibles, and specifically when it comes to Magic, it talks about the full history behind the Black Lotus, which is one of the most known cards and one of the most like desired cards in Magic. Of course, not to play because it's banned. There is a list that bans it, even to play in like other formats that are usually much more permissive. But this one is fully banned. But lots of people, they buy it for like thousands and thousands of dollars. So I really recommend. The video is really well done, edited, and someone explains everything about the card, the market, and some experienced card traders. They also talk about this universe. So I think it's an interesting video for us Magic nerds, right?